Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Heather Havenwood, and welcome to Like a Boss, helping you rise to the top. Okay, so today I have someone on the line. This is going to be a super interesting conversation, and it may touch on some emotions that you may or may not have, which is called women working with other women, as well as women rising up in the workforce today, especially accounting, law, financial services, and academia. I think it's a very powerful conversation that we don't sometimes have. We always have the stats around it sometimes, but we don't have a conversation around it. And this is not a political conversation, nothing like that. This is just truly an open dialogue conversation with an expert in her field. So let me introduce you to Andi. And Andi Kramer is a partner in the international law firm of McDermott, Will, and Emery LLP, one of the 10 best big law firms for female attorneys. Andi was the founding chair of the firm's Gender Diversity Committee, and she has served on she has served on both her firm's Management Committee and Compensation Committee. In these roles, she became deeply concerned about the disparities in the pace and extent of women's and men's career achievements. So along with her husband, she's actually written a book, okay? And the name of the book is Breaking Through Bias, Communication Techniques for Women to Succeed at Work with her husband, Al Harris. So thank you for being here, Andi.
Thank you very much, Heather. Glad to be here.
And I apologize, I botched your bio a little bit. As I said earlier in the green screen, I'm a little sick, so things aren't 100% clear for me today. So thank you for being so patient with me. And I apologize if I botched it anyway.
Not a problem.
Okay, so I really want to have this conversation, Andi. I love the fact, first of all, I want to acknowledge the fact that you and your husband wrote a book together. That's really unique within itself. So first of all, shout out to your husband, Al.
I'll let him know.
Well, shout out to Al over there, because I think that does say a lot about where we're at today, about having many times women support men in writing a book, and sometimes the women do write half the book, but they don't get their name and they actually co-create together. And I just want to acknowledge that's being done today. So, and that's part of our conversation. So let's start at the beginning. You obviously are a successful lawyer within yourself, but I have one question about your bio that I thought, let's go there. And that is one of the 10 best big law firms for female attorneys. What do you mean by that?
Well, there's studies that are done all the time about who's the best at this or who's the best at that. And big law firms in particular get a negative rap about not supporting and advancing women in the up to senior management. And so we've worked very hard to get ourselves positioned to where in a recent study, they looked at big law firms and the statistics and concluded that of the big law firms that our firm was in the top 10. So we're very pleased with that, and years of work.
And so let's talk about that for just a second, because this is like on the court kind of a case study here. When you say that this law firm is very good at top 10 with female attorneys, what does that mean? Meaning, is there a larger percentage than the norm that are partners and junior partners? What does that mean exactly? What have you guys focused on?
Well, it's unclear exactly what each study, they're all different. But for this one in particular, the questions would be how many women are advanced to senior partner levels, how many are on important firm committees, how many are office heads. And so from the statistical level, that's really the kinds of things that they're looking at.
Okay, well, that makes sense. Okay, that completely. I just was curious what this kind of the things that they were focusing on, how many partners. But let's start with some stats that you and I talked about in the green room, which is the percentage of women that are either executives or, in your case, attorneys as partners or junior partners. Let's talk about some stats, generally speaking, across the United States, of stats of female executives. Can you talk about that for a second?
Well, it turns out that although law is not one of the best practices or professions for women, it's not really very different from many others. So that what we see is that there's very few women that make it to the CEO level in most organizations. And women though, start their careers at the same place as men. In fact, women can get out of school with more degrees and more accolades. And yet when they get into the workforce, something happens, whether it's immediately or 5, 6, 7 years out. And so what we found is that a lot of what is going on is that there's gender bias in the workplaces which affect women's abilities to succeed. And so whether you're in an entrepreneur or a lawyer or a CPA or an Indian chief, it's going to be the same issues that happen in American workplaces.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay. The big question I have on the table, I think everyone, I'm just going to ask because that's my podcast, it's my show. So
you get to do what you want.
I can do what I want, right? I'm the boss. Okay, so thanks for the reminder today since I'm not feeling well. Thank you. I think one of the things I see, and I'm not in a big company and I'm definitely not at a big law firm, and so I give huge kudos. What I see over and over again is that women kind of hit this wall. They hit a wall around what I call junior level management, and they just can't seem to go that extra mile. And I don't know where that responsibility lies. I think it falls on many things culturally, of course, an executive team and whatnot. But where do you see in your experience and what you are focusing on with your book and your new book we'll talk about, what do you find the biggest challenges are today?
Well, what happens is when women get out of school and they start in their careers, very often they believe that the world and the corporate world and the business world is a meritocracy. So that all you have to do is put your head down and do a good job. And that's really what women think. Unfortunately, boys who grow into men, by the time they're 3, 4 years old, know that they have to be nice to the T-ball captain if they want to get put on the T-ball team. And so by the time they're in their careers, they are very comfortable navigating more of a political environment. Women were not trained or socialized to do that. And so that's one of the problems. Another issue that comes up is that because we all have stereotypes about women and men and leaders and home and work and family, that women are perceived, expected to be, and punished if we're not viewed as kind and sweet and nice.
Let me stop you there.
Yes.
Sister. I've talked about this many times, but I love the fact that you and I are having an open dialogue about this. I've talked about this on the show a lot, about my upcoming book, Unapologetically Fierce. I've talked about, I just want to add to this, is that I know for myself, I grew up in a Southern home with a beautiful mom, a Southern mom, and I was taught at a very young age, about, 6, first grade, second grade, which you're about 6 or 7 or so at that time, and you're taught very first day, right? Raise your hand to go to the bathroom and raise your hand to ask a question, and the girls are rewarded by the parents and the teachers to be good little girls. Oh, she's so nice. Oh, Heather's amazing in class because she's so sweet. Right. It's just so easy to deal with. I remember that one.
Yes, right.
Right. And then the boys who's rambunctious and like hitting the desk. Oh, well, that's okay. That's what boys do. Boys, it's okay to be rambunctious. And we are rewarded as females in general to be nice and sweet and loving and never cuss and all that stuff. Right. So when we grow up and the world isn't that way, I think that's a really key piece. I want to add to that your next piece that we can go into later, competition. I was in cheerleading or whatnot.
Oh, wow.
And cheerleading is cutthroat. It's cutthroat. It's cutthroat competition, and not in a good way, because T-ball and football, it's cutthroat, but they have to have team. They have to have the team to go beat the other team. In cheerleading, it's cutthroat within each other, right? It's like someone being in the same company and women being in the same company, and they're killing off each other. Meanwhile, the men are like helping each other build and grow, right? So right. What do you say to either one of those stories, and how is that intertwined in today's corporate world?
Well, a couple of things. To respond first to she's a nice girl, Heather's she's great to have in my class. When our daughter came home from 4th grade, she said, Mr. D hates the girls in math. Well, we know that one of the key things that girls are told is that they're bad in math. It turns out statistically and from the studies, they're better than the guys. It's just that they think they're not as good. So our kid comes home, says, Mr. D hates the girls in math. So we had a parent-teacher conference, and the next day we go to school and we say to Mr. D, hey, Charlie, who do you call on in math? And he said, I only call on the boys. They are so disruptive that the only way I can keep control in my classroom is to call on the boys. So Al says to him, well, have you ever thought about how the girls might feel about that? And his eyes got wide and he said, no, I never did. Next day, he's calling on girls. So the message that he was sending by only calling on the boys was that the girls are not good in math. He didn't want to get them involved.
Right.
And so the socialization starts. Well, he would have called on me and called on the girls if he thought we were good enough. And she thought that was what was happening. Yeah. And so part of the problem is that if we behave nice and kind and sweet, people like to have us around, but they think we're stupid. And so one of the issues is, what can a woman do to display competence and confidence and I know what I'm talking about without having everybody's hair catch fire because you're acting in a way that is out of stereotype and you're too masculine or you're too bossy, which is what girls get called instead of leadership roles.
Yeah, they're too bossy or stay in your place or stay in your lane. Or I love the fact that this is a great example of math. First of all, I have a minor in math. I love math. It wasn't until I got to college that I allowed myself to even be good at math because I didn't have all the negativity of social norm. And so I just really started to fall in love with it. I was like, this is so much easier than biology. And I I was like, this is great, man. Because I figure out problems, So anyway, I have a minor in math and I have a minor in physics, and I probably would, if I had known what I do now, I probably would have got a major in it and I would have gone that route, but I was not encouraged. I was encouraged to do things like, oh, you're a girl, you should do like accounting or, or like become like a CPA maybe. And then if you really want to be a social science. And I wanted to do economics, and I went to a professor. I was like, I really want to do economics. And he literally told me, women don't do economics. Now looking back now, I would have been great on Wall Street. I was like, but no one encouraged me. Right. I would have been a killer on Wall Street. I think I would have had a lot of fun. I think it's a really important piece. But how can people listening to this show going, hey, this is great. I mean, I'm helping my daughter right now, but how can I use the word fix, but what can I do now in my career, how can I move through this?
All right. Well, a couple of interesting things. And that's really what in our book where we do the conversations with yourself is to be able to talk to yourself about why to reach for the stars, to reach for what you want. But in interacting with other people, where if you're dealing with somebody who is biased, like your professor who said, no, you don't want to do that for a career, that's just not appropriate for you. When you're dealing with somebody like that, you can try to change their mind, you can ignore them, or you could confront them. And so you're presented with, in every communication that you have with somebody, you're presented with the opportunity to decide how you're going to relate to them. And so one of the things that we tell our readers and in our workshops we work on for women is that you decide what's your objective. What do you want to accomplish? If you want to get to the next level, what is it going to take? And it might take you needing to dial up some of you do this and you do that, and we're going to meet at 5:00 and discuss it. Or it may force you to dial some of that down where you are a little more communal. The word you mentioned, community, at the beginning. And the stereotypes about women are that we're supposed to be communal, which comes from community, and that we're supposed to worry about those sorts of things. And men, the stereotypes about men are that they're agentic, which comes from the word agency, where they're going to get the job done. I'm going to do it. I'm going to get it done. I'm independent. I'm free thinking, and I'm going to solve the problems.
Really interesting to me, though, about men that I've really noticed in the last couple of years of my life is that men are extremely supportive of other men. They are really good at it. It's that team play thing again.
Right.
You know, if they were on t-ball or baseball or soccer or whatever, they are taught, you might not like that guy next to you. He's your teammate, you know? And when you do better, he does better, and we all come together. And they're taught that at a young age. They have Rotary and a lot of men's clubs that
Sure.
I actually grew up in. The other day I was at breakfast early in the morning in Dallas at 7 a.m. and I looked across this cute little cafe in near downtown Dallas. And I would say 95% of the people were in there were men who obviously was like a business meeting. They were sitting across each other and they were having conversations. They were all like in some kind of business attire, and they were all like talking and having conversations about whatever, business or whatever. A lot of them were like, oh, it's good to see you. I could hear that. And I thought, wow, where's the women business doing that? Where's that? And I know, so I think that's a great conversation. I'm not asking you to fix it all right now, of course, Andi, but what in your book and what in your newest book with your husband are you doing to help that or solve that?
Well, it really goes to your point previously about the cheerleaders, which is that if you're on a team and there's a hierarchy, there's a team captain and there's a this and there's a that, and then everybody else is just going to do their job, is very different from the cheerleading situation where there's one star and everybody else is going to be working for or performing but behind the star.
Yeah.
And so we don't get as little girls and young women, we don't get the same opportunities because we're not encouraged to play the kind of team sports. Women are encouraged to do team sports like running or something where you're competing against yourself, basically. And so that's part of it. But the other part of it is that the gender biased workplaces allow men to support each other, because there's always room at the table for one more bright guy.
Ooh.
There's not always room at the table for one more smart woman. So that what happens is, if I've worked so hard to get this spot and then you come along, if I take you under my wing, what happens is you get my spot. In many organizations, it's not as if, well, there's room for Heather too. Come on, Heather, join us. And so our second book that we're working on about women working with women is trying to address some of the very issues that come out in the context of the cheerleading example. Mm-hmm. And the breakfast where the men are meeting with each other. What can women do to help ourselves and help each other? And a lot of it is because of the workplace bias. And so the working title that we have on our new book, which obviously can change, is It's Not You, It's the Workplace.
That's so I have this, by the way, I love that title. I think that's really great. I have to share, my sister works for Visa, and she's in a very tech space. So she's high-end tech. So she's product development, she's tech.
So she got the math and the science stuff that you got to. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we both did. And she shares with me sometimes, they have headquarters in San Francisco. She lives here in Austin with me. And she talked to me at one time. That was all the time she's so used to it. But when she first started the job, she's like, Heather, I walked into our offices, and for 3 floors, this particular building, 3 floors, was all the tech. I was literally the only white woman in 3 floors. 3 floors, only white woman. Not the only woman. There were some Indian women there. Only white woman. Every time I go into a meeting now, I'm the only white woman. Like, it was this weird, like, I'm the white woman. You know what I mean?
Exactly,
and I was like,
exactly.
What? And she's like, I'm constantly dealing with this totally different culture, and she's navigating through that and whatnot. It was just an interesting conversation. She's like, she's dealt with IBM and she's worked at Dell and big companies, but being the only white woman, which is this weird, like, oh, you're a white woman? She's like, I'm a white woman. It was very strange. Like, I didn't know that. That's strange. Because it's a culture mainly of in India. right, culture. So just in that particular niche, right? And so it's this whole nother conversation of not only being a woman and then being this white woman thing, different. Yeah, I don't know, what that was all weird. But then there's a whole culture. India has their own culture around women, right? So
yes,
dealing with that as well on top of the corporate structure.
Well, that's referred to as intersectionality, which is that when you have a characteristic or a social identity, where you actually have additional ones, we all do. So the two of us talking to each other, we're both white women, okay?
Yeah, right.
But if I was African American or if I was Indian, now we have different intersections of different stereotypes.
Mm-hmm.
So the stereotypes about women being kind and nice and sweet, those are the stereotypes that are applied across the board to white women. If I'm a Black woman, then the stereotypes about me are going to be that I'm aggressive, I'm angry, I'm in your face, but the flip side of it is I'm mammy. I'm going to be from Gone with the Wind, whatever you want, whatever I can do to make your life comfortable. So there's that tension. And in Indian families, the women in their careers are very well advanced and respected, but at home, very often, they don't even have a seat at the table. They feed the food and then they eat,
somewhere else,
friends, parents never, the moms never sat down with them. And so in that situation, your sister's dealing with people who have different cultural identities and gender identities. And so she has to navigate those things. And those are actually topics that we're discussing in It's Not You, It's the Workplace.
Do you have any stats about that? While it sounds like you're researching right now, you're reading it. Do you have anything that you can share more about stats around that or things that you're working on?
Well, what we found is that in particular, white women don't understand how much harder it is for women of color to succeed in the workplace. So your sister's in an interesting position where she's in what's referred to as the out group. The in group is whoever's got the most people, basically, the majority. So she's normally an in group person is in the out group in her workplace. And so the statistics show that it's much harder for out group people because they try so hard to identify with or be included in the in group. And obviously it's her talent that's going to allow her to be welcomed in, and the, modern workplace encouraging teamwork and whatnot. But there aren't any real statistics about, the statistics that we do have is that as bad as it is for women, the percentages that we started with, where I said that maybe 5% in CEOs at the most, and in senior leadership positions, maybe 10 to 20%. When we look at African American women, they're not even 2%. And so the opportunities for them to advance become harder because the assumption from the stereotypes is that obviously there aren't senior Black women because they're not competent. And so they have to prove over and over again how competent they are. Women have to prove over and over again how competent we are. They have it worse.
Let me ask you a question, because that's a really interesting piece about proving your worth, right? That's a really big conversation. My new book, Unapologetically Fierce, Stop Asking for Permission. That I'm really kind of going down that road of permission-based piece. But that proving of your worth is just, if not the same, if worse, right? Which is kind of a level of asking for permission. Proving the worth is just challenging. What are you finding as ways to help or solve or guide women to say, oh my God, I'm tired of proving my worth here? Or okay, I got to prove my worth. How do I do that, Andi? Like, how do I do that in such a way where I don't lose myself and that I actually win?
Well, there's a lot of pieces to that onion that we're just that you just presented here. But one of the key things is that very often, because we're trained and socialized to be kind and nice and sweet and not bossy, we don't own our accomplishments. So that as a starting point, women have to get to the point where they're willing to admit and acknowledge what they've accomplished and what they've brought to the table. That's the first thing. So I'll give you an example. I got started in the whole area about gender communication when I was on our compensation committee, and I started reading the self-evaluations. And a man would write a self-evaluation. I'm a total rock star. I climbed to the top of the Empire State Building. I circled around. I found the way to rescue 20 damsels in distress on the way down, and I saved the client $500 million. The woman who had come up with the idea that saved the client the $500 million would write her self-evaluation saying, I'm on the ABC team, and I worked with so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so, and our team saved the client $500 million. Well, who do you think is going to be making more money, Heather?
I know the answer to that.
Yes, you do know the answer to that. So that's the first thing that comes up. The other thing is that very often women don't get the same opportunities as men. So one of the things we need to do is we need to be aware of that. We need to be reaching for the stars. We need to be raising our hand to say, I would like that project. And if over and over again, you don't get the project because they think that it's inappropriate for a woman to have that job,
right,
well, then maybe it's time for another career change or to make a move. But very often, if you say, let me try, if you ask for it, it's harder for people to say no to you.
You know, it reminds me of a story, a couple of things. I have a coach who said to me once, never stay where your presence is not valued. Wow. It's a big one, right? Never stay where your presence.
It is absolutely a big one.
And one of the things I found interesting recently, and this is a true story, and I don't share this often. I'm part of I was now, and this is why I'm bringing it up. I was part of an internet marketing event, been for 10 years, very supportive of the person running it, as that team, pardon me, right? Supportive, and I invite people, and 10 years every single month. So I was very involved,
right?
Enjoyed going. It was very social for me. I met some great people, but they had this thing they have an event every month, and they have a big speaker, and they bring in some really amazing people. And I noticed it was rare that it had women. And I said some things over the years, like, hey, you really have an opportunity here to, you have the opportunity here to really bring up women. And, you know, he did what he did. But the next thing this was the killer. And I'm pointing it out because I don't think men get what it means. When I went up to him years ago and said, hey, there's no women here, he took it as a complaint. What I was trying to say to him is like, hey, you're the leader of this group. You have an opportunity to really bring some women up and give them confidence and say, hey, we want to hear from you too. Like, you had this amazing opportunity, right? Anyway, he did what he did. But here's my point. So I was there at this event, and every event they have what I call think tank before, like that day before. And he handpicks 10 of his best buddies that, right? And they get to like basically talk to the speaker privately for like 2-3 hours in a private conference room. They do it all the time. And I'm never invited. They've been going on for years. And finally I said something publicly on a Facebook page, like, oh, look, it's a bro club, like shocked. I just said something like that. Right. And I got inundated with a lot of negative stuff from the guys. I've actually had people unfriend me over it. And then when I was there next, the gentleman who runs it came up to me. He was inebriated, so I'll give him that. But he walked right up to me and he said, you know why you're never invited to the think tank? And I said, no, I don't know. He goes, you have no value. This is 2018. This is 2 months ago. I was like, wow, this is a person. I was like, wow, wow, you know what I mean? Like, really? This is my industry. I've been in it for 10 years. I've
you don't have any
supported
value.
you. I have helped you. And I got to say, was I angry? But that really, as a woman, that hurt a lot.
Of course it did.
I mean, it hurt. Now, what's so fascinating about that, I mean, I was like kind of taken back and had all these guys come up, like pull him away from me. I wasn't mad, but they all pulled him away from me. And they all looked at me and said, he didn't mean it, Heather. They backed him. They didn't mean it, Heather. Didn't mean it. And I said, yes, he did.
Yes, he did. Gaslighting.
Yes, he did. And I actually want to thank him for doing that, because he finally said what's true for him. And he actually said what's been in the room for 10 years. And now I know my presence is not valued, and I'm done.
Well, you're going to do so. You're going to take your time and do it in a way that's going to be more valuable and respected.
Yeah,
and that happens to women every day in every workplace. And very often they're not told. They just get excluded.
They get excluded, and you know it. You can feel it. I mean, I've been excluded for years and years and years and years. And then I said one thing, and it wasn't even like mean. It was just like, oh, look, it's the boys club. Like, oh, there's right. Oh, look, there's pink curtains. Like, I just said it like fact. And I got blasted publicly on social media first.
Right.
And then I got blasted privately in front of some people. And I thought to myself, and we're all independent, so we're under no corporation veil.
Sure.
But I thought, wow, if I'm getting that in this small community and I proved my worth for 10 years, I can't imagine what it's like in corporate.
Well, that's why women leave. That's why women leave their career, leave their firms, leave their companies, because they hit their heads against the wall and finally they say, I'm just not going to take it anymore. And so in our book, what we try to do is we try to give you some options as to how to deal with it. You're never going to wait 10 years again. But you learned an important lesson, which was that when he said that to you, the guys told you he didn't mean it, but they didn't turn to him and say, what are you talking about? She's amazing. And that's the problem. The problem is that they support each other in a way that makes it very hard, and they'll make you feel that somehow there's something wrong with you, that you even thought that in the first place. And that's the old movie Gaslight, where the woman she marries this guy and he wants to get her committed to think she's crazy because he's running a criminal operation in their house. So he would was before they had electric lights, he would turn the gas lights up and turn the gas lights down, and then tell her that nothing had happened, so that she would be experiencing things and she would be told that she was imagining it to try to make her go crazy. And we have a blog about gaslighting on our website, on our website, because that's something that happens to women all the time. Oh, you're really overreacting, or he really didn't mean it, or don't you have a sense of humor?
Yeah. And it's been 3 months now, actually not 2. Have I gotten one phone call from the boys club saying, where have you been? We've missed you here, or anything, or, hey, what's going?
No, well, they closed ranks.
Yeah. Right. They closed ranks. Yeah. And it's the unsaid that I know that they closed ranks. And and it's one of those things where I was there on the very first day of the very first meeting 10 years ago with 10 people, and I've supported it. And so it's, again, it's not about me. It's about understanding.
No, but it's the dynamic.
It's the social dynamic we're talking about. And that social dynamic is so embedded in that it's like women are up against that kind of thing. They're up against that. And I'm a pretty powerful person. And so I'm a pretty brass person and bossy person. That's why I don't do well in the corporate world. But
it's a good word, by the way.
I'm brassy and bossy and like, what? And so I found it really fascinating. But the fascinating piece that was so interesting on a social dynamic psychology level was how all the men, everyone, said to me, he didn't mean it, but backed him. And they completely cut me out. And I thought, that tells you what's happening in today, every day, and they say things like, Well, if you get more valuable, you can come to the think tank. If you make three, more millions than these guys, well, then I guess I'll consider it. So it's that conversation like, well, there's not really room at the table for a girl. There's just more a woman. It's more of like, let us know if you can even try to get at the seat at the table. And then we might find a spot for you.
Well, that's the problem with bias, which is that no matter how much, the studies show that, I'll give you an example of one, which is that some science professors were sent a resume, and half of them received, thousands of them, and half of them received a resume that had a man's name on it, and half of them received a resume that had a woman's name on it. And they were asked who would they hire to run a laboratory, to be a laboratory leader, whatever, technician, head of the lab, and a lab supervisor. And the men and the women professors would give the job to the man dramatically more than they would give the job to the woman. And if they agreed to hire her, they would offer her less compensation and agree to mentor her for less time than they would agree to mentor the man, on the grounds that he had more potential than she did. Their resume was word for word identical, except for the name that was on the top. And so what we're trying to do in our book and in our workshops and on our blogs is not to get women to feel discouraged, but to acknowledge that you're not alone, which is an important point, because what happened to you is just one example, a day in the life of any woman. And so it's important to know you're not alone. That's sort of the importance. Information becomes powerful. And the information that you get by understanding what the stereotypes are and the biases then allow you to say, here's my checklist, and here's what I want to accomplish today. And the very first thing on the top of it is, I want to get what I want. And if what I want to get what I want is going to require me to ask for it, is going to require me to own my own, own my own accomplishments, is going to require me to at some point say, you're gaslighting me, I'm out of here, then all of those things are important, because you have to keep in mind that you're the one that you should be worried about your own career and how you're going to succeed. And you can't let the stereotypes and the biases that other people have define who you are and where you're going to go with your career.
Well, Andi, we're out of time. We could probably talk about this forever.
Probably.
Yeah, we could.
At least I could.
Yeah, I could too, completely, have so many stories. But I just want to give you an opportunity to share about your current book, upcoming book, and where can they find you?
Okay. Well, our current book is Breaking Through Bias, Communication Techniques for Women to Succeed at Work. And it's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, your local bookstore. Our book that we're working on now goes to the publisher January 2nd. And so it'll be out next year. It is, the working title now is It's Not You, It's the Workplace. But if people would like to test to see how they would handle potentially gender-biased workplaces, we have an assessment on our website. We have lots of blogs. We have a newsletter that comes out. And so people could visit us at www.andieandal.com, and that's spelled ANDIE, because that's the goofy way I spell my name, and ANDALAL. So ANDIEANDAL.
So that is basically your name and your husband's name, Al. So
that's right.
Okay, so Andi and Al. Oh, that's cute. I like that. That's super cute. Andi and Al. ANDIE and ANDAL. Okay, I love that. That's super cute. I couldn't figure it out. I was like, how do I say this URL?
AndieandAl.com.
I love it. Well, go check that out, AndieandAl.com. And then on Amazon, what can they type into Amazon? The name of the book?
Just Breaking Through Bias. Communication techniques, or they could type in Kramer or Andi or Andrea, and they'll find it. Breaking Through Bias.
Good, great. That's awesome. Thank you so much for what you're doing and what you're up to and what you're creating for women around the world and here in the United States. I just want to say thank you for that. And it's a conversation that I think that more and more people should have, not just women, men too. I think it's an unsaid conversation that needs to be said. Even me sharing about this story here on my show concerns me. I mean, I said one little blurb on Facebook, and I got, so it makes me nervous to speak out and say, hey, this isn't right. This isn't okay. It's not okay. And it's not my company, it's just it's just a community. It's not really even my job. So I just wanted to encourage anyone listening, any woman out there, it's okay to stand up. It's okay to say, this isn't working. I don't like this. This is done. I'm done. I'm done with this. This doesn't work anymore. So thank you for what you and your husband, Al, are doing. And go check them out at Andie, Andie, Al.com.
Yeah, Andie, I-E. A-N-D.
I-E, A-N-D, Al.com. Okay, got it.
Okay.
It'll be in the show notes at HeatherHavenwood.com.
Perfect.
And Heather Havenwood on Amazon and Alexa. So go check it out now. This is HeatherHavenwood.com. Like a boss. See you for now.